this, we're going to tax it, but to do it, you would have violated federal law. There is that tension that sometimes comes up. I don't think anybody here is in that industry, so that's an extreme example. But it is an example of the fact that you can be in strict compliance with one law, but in violation with another. You know, I don't want to say a whole lot about intellectual property protection now, other than to say that this is an issue. This is one of the considerations for companies, maybe not so much here from Europe, but certainly from other parts of the globe. This is a consideration in determining where they're going to organize their company, develop and hold and exploit their intangibles, including technology such as intellectual property. Trademark, as we know, is the right to protect a fanciful logo or design. Where's mine? Like my trademark down in the right-hand corner. Copyright, the right to protect a literary or artistic work. Patent, an invention. But the one that I deal with mostly is the last one, trade secret. And this is the one that gets companies in trouble the most often. Because unlike these other rights where there are public registrations, trade secret really depends on your actions. So not only does the idea have to be valuable to the company, it has to be secret in order to get protection. And to be secret, that means that the company has to have done something to keep it secret. Most commonly, have everybody sign confidential information agreements. Now, in my book that was referenced here, the full title of which, by the way, is actually Dead on Arrival, How to Avoid the Mistakes That Will Kill Your Startup. I talk a lot about this because this is a mistake that I see startup companies make most often, is they don't have agreements with everybody who has touched their technology, consultants, employees, and others. And sometimes we can fix that. Sometimes it creates a real cloud on ownership of the technology, and that can be a real problem. So it's the kind of thing to think of in advance before you even hire somebody. Let's go over this. Let's go right to kind of the biggest issue. So suppose you've made the decision to enter the market, and the first question you'll have is, well, how do I do that? I just want to hire a rep to sit in an office and test the water, see if we can generate some sales, maybe knock on a few doors on Sand Hill Road. So the question is, do we have a U.S. branch or do we have a U.S. subsidiary? So almost always, because of the liability protection issues, the answer is going to be a U.S. corporation. Every once in a while, with some companies in some countries, will opt for a branch for non-U.S. tax reasons. But as a U.S. tax matter, there's no real difference at the end of the day between a branch and a corporation. And almost always, because of the liability issues, we want to establish a corporation as soon as possible. It's a relatively simple thing to do in the United States. It doesn't take much to set up. In fact, you can even do it poorly, but you can do it online through some of the services. And this is an area that we are trying to take a lot of the inefficiency out through some of our online resources that will make this process a little more streamlined, but also more effective. So the reason, the overriding, I mentioned I was going to talk about tax, and this is something to keep in mind, because this permeates everything that you will do in the U.S. So one reason you have a U.S. corporation subsidiary is to limit liability, right? Because nobody wants to get drug into the U.S. court system, because it is perceived as somewhat of a crapshoot. You know, just ask O.J. Simpson. You know, you never know what's going to happen in a U.S. courtroom. So one of those reasons is limited liability. The other one, of course, is tax. Because if a foreign company ends up having what we call a U.S. permanent establishment, which means basically a fixed place of business, that foreign company is going to be taxable on the income attributable to the U.S. office. So we want to avoid that. Now, where companies get in trouble over this is when you have officers, and all of you here will do this, I promise you, because everybody does this. You're going to have, for a period of time, an officer of the non-U.S. company also be the officer of the U.S. company. It's just how you would naturally start things out. And I guess every once in a while you might think far enough ahead and have enough funding that you can hire, and you might trust somebody enough that you can hire a U.S. officer right from the get-go. But almost always you're going to immediately start out with a non-U.S. officer. And that's fine, So long as that non-US officer doesn't come to the United States,